Unless you speak, But what measure could amount to your desire? You're the one who never leaves the one behind. Everybody can sit down now.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Church 180. Just also want to say good morning. I'm Lucia. Let's hear it. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, everybody had their Wheaties this morning. I wanted to say thank you for being here today. I also want to thank we have our friends and our family and our brothers and sisters on Facebook as well. So I want to say hi to them and let them know that we're here listening as well as they are. And we want to make sure also that you get to know some of the announcements and things we have going on today here at Church 180 and in the following weeks. So with that, I want to say and remind everybody again, Connect card. If you're here every day, every week that you're here, fill out a Connect card. If you're new, take it to the info center afterward and you get a cool little gift from us. In addition to that, we want to make sure that you fill this out if you have any prayer requests, anything that we can pray for you. Also, it's a way for us to keep connected to you as a church community. So please don't forget to fill out your Connect card. It's the best way that we keep contact with you. Every single week we need to fill it out. So I'm going to be here, or somebody will be here to remind you every single week that we're going to be, we need to fill out the Connect card. Next week we have Discover 180 with Pastor Tony and Kelsey, and they'll be talking to everyone about the Church 180 culture. That's next Sunday. Join them after service, and I believe there'll be childcare provided, right? And lunch, so you get to eat and learn. So we exist and inspire hope to our communities and bring more people towards Jesus because of the generosity of everyone here. If you'd like to give to Church 180's efforts and the projects that we have going on, you can go on church180sd.com. In addition to that, you can also, you have the option of using an envelope and taking it to the back in the offerings box, or you can also use the P.O. box that's on the address here. But if not, online, church180sd.com/give. There are still spots available for youth camp this summer. There's 4 spots left for high school and 4 for middle school. The next deposit is due March 15th. So if you have any questions about the youth camp, you can contact Ricky at the info table after service today. Lastly, Pastor Tony is prepping a new series for Easter next weekend. So we're all excited and we hope you can join us as we are learning. We have this new learning opportunity. And that will also help us to get closer to Jesus and learn more about him. So with that, I'll leave you with Pastor Tony.
Thanks, Raquel. Hey, good morning. Welcome. We're glad that you are here. Man, I'm excited about this morning, okay? And I'm excited to close off this series that we've started called Can Be. And so what we've said is we've said, hey, there is what was, okay? And so when it comes to what was, we're talking about the pre-pandemic world. This is good for us to evaluate individually. It's good for a business. It's good for a church to say, okay, what was before COVID came into this world? Like, what was it, okay? And for us, it wasn't much, It's like 7 weeks of history and everything. But still, we had momentum. We were going places. And then the world came to an abrupt stop. And so as a result, the last 2 years, we now are living in what is, okay? And God, like we talked about this for our birthday, God has done a lot of cool things in what is. And God has helped us in some miraculous ways move this church forward in what is. But now we're starting to kind of pivot and starting to say, okay, based on what was, based on what is, now what can be. And that's where we're going today. Okay, Ricky did an amazing job last week kicking off this series with kind of a biblical overview, talking about some stuff, so you can go back and check that out if you missed it. But today, I want to just kind of open up the playbook of Church 180. I want to kind of open up, who it is, what we're attaining, what we're striving for, what we're striving to attain here, and just lay it before you. and say, hey, these are our dreams, and this is what we think can be, not only for our church, but I also want to talk specifically about your life. Now, I want to give a little caveat real quick. I feel like we've talked about a lot of, like with our birthday and everything, we've talked about a lot of giving and serving and stuff like that. I do not want to twist anybody's arm. Like, I am not going to ask you to fill out your Connect card today and do this. I just simply want to inform you because I think that you should know the inner workings of your church family. And you should know how we work, okay? So can we get that out of the way first? And then the other thing I want to say is this. Next week, Raquel already kind of mentioned it, but next week we are going to begin a brand new series, but one that we've already done before, okay? And so we are going to do a series called 79 Miles with Jesus, okay? And 79 miles is the exact distance from Galilee to Jerusalem. And so a lot of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, a lot of the Gospels take place on that road. And Jesus heading from his region where he started his ministry, region where he grew up, and going to the main hub, the main city to where he would eventually be executed and die. And so what we did was we did 79 Miles with Jesus a couple years ago, and we talked about 4 specific stories getting ready for Easter. Actually, we didn't even do it around Easter then. This year, we're going to do 79 Miles with Jesus, and we are going to prepare our hearts and prepare our minds, and every single week we're going to talk about these things taking place on the road to Easter. That said, and we'll probably do it every couple years. That said, let me say this to you real quick, okay? We are excited about Easter. We're going to be talking a lot about our plans over the coming weeks in this series. But right now, just so you know, we are excited about Easter. It's going to be April 17th. We're going to be back inside, and we're going to be doing 2 services that morning, a 9 and an 11 a.m. service. So get ready. We're going to be giving you invite cards, all kinds of stuff over the next few weeks. It's going to be good. We're going to be preparing. But for today, we're going to talk about what can be. So to kind of kick off today, I was kind of thinking about this real quick. Anybody Trader Joe's fans in here? Anybody go to Trader Joe's? we got pointing going on. I really do. I don't go to Trader Joe's very often because they end up taking my entire grocery budget when I do. And because it's like an adult candy store, right? It is. Like, you go in there, okay? And for me, I go in there looking for nice cheeses. They got some cheeses from New Zealand, which I like to get. We go in there, like, I love their sauces and their spice rubs, like the barbecue rub with coffee in it. It's so good. And I like some of the sauces. I'll go in there for like cheese and sauces and maybe some flowers for Kelsey or something. And I come out with like chocolate covered almonds, you know what I mean? Microwavable Indian meals, the whole assortment for like a charcuterie board that's going to be eaten that night. And like, you get what I mean? I drift, like, the latest version of ginger beer or whatever they've got going on. And I drift through the store and it ends up taking all my money. And the point that I'm trying to say is that when I'm in Trader Joe's, I get mission creep, right? And that's what we're going to talk about today. Like, mission creep is this: losing focus of the main objective or assignment to chase after something else that pops up along the way. And that's why we've defined it. And what I want to say is this, okay? Oftentimes with your life, and oftentimes with the church, our church even, we can lose focus of the main objective or assignment to chase after something else that pops up along the way, right? And it can be success that gets us down like the path that, towards the wrong objective. It can be failure. It can be, for us, I think individuals, it can be peer pressure, right? It can be like keeping up or one-upping or whatever. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. It can be, I think for me, a lot of times it's opportunity. You're like, oh, that's an opportunity? We could do that? I mean, we could buy that. We could, like the tax refund came in. It's all kinds of opportunity, right? And you get what I mean. It's mission creep. And so what I want to do today, and before we start talking about our church and before we start talking about your life, which we're going to go to, is I want to go to a very famous text of mission creep in the early church. So we're going to be in the book of Acts, chapter 6, and we're going to start in verse 1 today. So the book of Acts, chapter 6, verse 1, as we unpack this. And so Acts, if you're not familiar with the book of Acts, it is the kind of the story of the foundation and beginnings of the church. It's literally the Acts of the Apostles, the Acts of the eyewitnesses who watched Jesus, talked and walked with Jesus, and then began this movement that has, that we're here 2,000 years later at church outdoors, and doing this. And so Acts is kind of how they did it. It's a description of how this happened. And I think it's very helpful. And I'm going to say this, and I've heard this from Pastor Larry Osborne up at North Coast. We learned this in Bible college, and I just feel like I need to give this little caveat as we talk about Acts. Acts really is a description of what happened, not a prescription for what to do. Okay? And I think that's it's helpful to say that as we go here, because I think a lot of people look at the book of Acts and are like, we got to do it exactly like they did it. And it's like, no, hold on. It's a description of what happened, not a prescription of what we can do. However, throughout the book of Acts, and as we're going to learn today, we learn that the specific story today and a lot of stories within the book of Acts, they give us some valuable key lessons for us as a church and how to emulate what they did in some of it. And so Acts chapter 6, verse 1 says this: In those days, when the number of disciples was increasing, the Hellenistic Jews among them complained against the Hebraic Jews because their widows were being overlooked in the daily distribution of food. Now let's get some context here for a second. So this is not the Gentiles that are starting to become a part of the church. These are just the Jewish people, the Hellenistic Jews and the Hebraic Jews. Okay, so let me help you understand a little bit of what's going on here, because the Hellenistic Jews would have been people who were Jewish, but leaning more towards and living more towards Greece in that world where the Greeks were, which were considered the Gentiles. And so to the purist or whatever, the Jews, the ones that had been Hebrews in Egypt and carried this tradition, they kind of looked down their noses at these kind of people, who weren't specifically like them and had been influenced by this Greek culture. Okay? And so it's a wonder why the Hellenistic Jews are being overlooked and everything. And the Hebraic Jews are the more central, this is over time from the Exodus from Egypt as slaves, from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, from Egypt and everything. These are the more carried along the bloodline for a long time. And the Hellenistic Jews are being overlooked. And so I need you to understand that God is up to something with the church, but as always, Satan is looking to thwart the mission of the church and using either racism or perceived racism to do it amongst these two groups. That's what's happening. And so this is going on, and that's the thing, all the time. Your leaders, okay, your leaders, we are constantly being bombarded by either the enemy or other, Trader Joe's moments, with mission creep to be off course and off the main objective and off the main mission. That just happens, okay, over and over and over. And so at the time, the church is exploding in number, and the church, okay, this is going to be a slide, but the church is known and advances always through care and calling. It is known and advances through care and calling. We're going to explain that and unpack that as we go. So verse 2 says this: As a result of the widows being overlooked in the daily distribution of food, because this is a big deal. It says, the 12 gathered all the disciples together, and they said, it would not be right for us to neglect the ministry of the word of God in order to wait on tables. Brothers and sisters, choose 7 men from among you who are known to be full of the Spirit and wisdom. And we will turn this responsibility over to them, and we'll give our attention to prayer and the ministry of the word. I need you to hear something real quick. This work was not beneath them. Okay, this was not beneath them, but this was going to be mission creep as to what God had specifically called them to do as being eyewitnesses of Jesus and the work that he did and hearing his voice and instruction on how to live. Okay, and so this is also not a guide for exactly what we should do as a result of it. Yet there are a bunch of lessons that we can learn from it. See, here's what they do. I already said the church is known for and advances through care and calling. So what they would end up doing is organizing themselves around care and calling. They would begin to organize themselves around care and calling. And very specifically, they would begin, I need you to hear me on this. They would begin to organize themselves around the final words of Jesus that they would hear, right? The Great Commission. Matthew chapter 28, starting in verse 16. We'll pick up in verse 19. It says this. It's not going to be on the screen or anything like this, but it says this. Jesus said this right before he left. He said, "Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you, and surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." Literally, that is the objective. Jesus is saying, this is your calling. This is how you organize yourself. This is what you do. So all the time, okay, understand, all the time, through opportunities, through needs, through Satan and the enemy, they would be pulled off of this objective. And the church, through growth, through success, the church was exploding at the time. But in the explosion, all these other issues came up, and now they're being pulled away from the objective that they've been given. So every time that would happen, they would begin to add a layer of organization back into it so that they could not experience mission creep and be about the objective and the words that they had been given in the first place. Making sense at all? Good. And so they organize themselves around that. And we would continually see that. And I feel like I need to give a caveat real quick, okay? Because I know that there's a lot of skepticism out there over all organized religion, right? Can we be honest? There's skepticism about the organized church in a lot of ways, and a lot of that is it's legitimate, The organized church has burned a lot of people, hurt a lot of people, got off mission and destroyed lives and stuff. However, I have never seen the advancement of the mission of Jesus in those final words actually happen without a little structure and organization, right? Just never seen it. I mean, if you want to talk to me later and say, hey, this is where I saw it, that'd be great. I haven't seen it in my my time. And so Acts chapter 6 verse 5 says this proposal pleased the whole group. So they chose Stephen, who I'm named after. That's my real name, guys, just so you know. Stephen Anthony, Tony. Go by Tony. They chose Stephen, a man full of faith in the Holy Spirit. Also Philip, Prochorus, Nicanor, Timon, I'm butchering names, Parmenas, and Nicholas from Antioch, a convert to Judaism. And they presented these men to the apostles, who prayed, laid their hands on them, and then get this, verse 7. So the word of God spread, and the number of disciples in Jerusalem increased rapidly, and a large number of priests became obedient to the faith. So as a result of their little bit of organization that they did, they advanced the mission of Jesus forward. So here's what I want to do, okay? Here's what I want to do. I want to take the next few minutes to talk about the organization of the church, our church, Church 180, how we organize ourselves and kind of do the whole playbook thing. And then I want to take a few minutes to talk about your life, okay, and your calling, and how we can get mission creep with our lives. Is that cool? But before I start on the church, I want to say this. I believe this to be true. It's not going to be a slide, but the Big C Church, as well as Church 180's ability to fulfill the assignment and see people turn toward hope, is directly connected to how many of us actually live out our calling. Like, you have a calling for your life. I have a calling for my life. And the question is whether we will live that out. And the effectiveness of the church, the effectiveness of Church 180 will hinge on how many of us actually live out the calling that God's given us to advance the mission. You get it, right? And so that said, okay, here's what we're going to do. Like I said, not going to ask anybody to join a team today. Just feel like you should know a little bit about our church. So at our church, we are adding a little bit of organization and a little bit of structure. I explained our 9:30 huddle. We get all of our team members that are serving, team leaders that are serving for the day, and we just talk about a couple things. We pray, and we throw our hands in the middle, and we say break, and today we said let's go, and we did it out together. But here's the deal, okay? When we're doing that, like we're trying to build a culture amongst our teams. And so what I want to kind of share with you first is just I want to rip it open, because all of our what I said there in the meeting today is that all of our teams are going to be meeting over the next month, and we're going to be talking about some of this stuff in like super detail. But the first thing that we expect out of our teams, if you're a team member, if you serve at Church 180, if you have a role, and you're a team member, is that you carry our culture. You carry our culture, because the thing that we say a lot of times at Church 180 is that we can say a lot of things, we can have a vision, we can have a direction, we can do whatever, but culture always eats strategy for breakfast. So the first thing that we ask out of anybody who serves is we say, what we need you to do is we need you to carry our culture. And you have that on your little note sheets that you have today. And honestly, this is how we say it. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. So this entails setting our personal preferences in the moment to our agreed upon strategy, but it means living out the Church 180 cultural values with your life. Okay, so we carry the culture. Our second cultural value that we kind of try to embed into this church family is this. And this one I could talk about all the time, but it's this, is that relational warmth as a church, it's our bread and butter. Relational warmth is our bread and butter. We're not trying to be the slickest church in town. We're trying to do some things. I mean, the worship team absolutely killed it this morning. I'm having to look at my notes more than I want to today and everything. But what I'm trying to say is this. We lead as a church from relationships. And we lead from trying to be a church that is warm and is friendly and is inviting, and where people experience relational connections, and where people find friends and people to do life with. So we say it this way: one of our greatest assets as a church is the warmth of our people. We believe people will possibly make a decision about Jesus based on how genuine we are and how genuinely we care for the people around here. So relational warmth is our bread and butter, and we ask everybody who's on a team to carry that part of our culture. Number 3, our outrageous dependability is our foundation. Because the reality is that everything really does begin with showing up where we say we'll be when we say we'll be there. Nothing happens without dependability. Absolutely nothing. Our number 4 cultural value is we fall on the ball. And then we say it this way. It's kind of like that football analogy, right? Where the ball comes loose in a fumble, and it doesn't matter what position you play. It doesn't matter what you do the rest of the game. If you see a loose ball, you get the heck on it to recover the ball for your team. And what we say around here, and for myself included, no job is beneath us. If we see an issue in the moment, we fix the thing with the best of our ability that we can. So we fall on the ball. That's our 4th. Number 5 is mediocrity is our enemy. Mediocrity is our enemy. We say this. We say successful people do consistently what others do occasionally, right? Successful. That's a Craig Groeschel thing. Don't tweet me. Successful people do consistently what others do occasionally. We believe status quo has no place in the church or this church. So we want to continually, you see us tweaking things all the time. I mean, if you've been meeting with us at all in this new year, you've seen that we've had this courtyard set up like 18 different ways in the last few months. And that's because mediocrity is our enemy. And we're like, oh, the sun hit from this angle, so let's try this angle and do this because we want to make it better. We want to make what we're doing better constantly. This is what we're going to do. And then the last one's huge. And this is unfortunately where I've seen a lot of churches get it wrong. And we're a church plant, we're brand new, so we don't want to get this part wrong. Is that we have open hands and open hearts. And what that means is this, is that adaptability, especially after COVID, is a superpower and is the key to a church plant and a church in general, if we're honest. And so this is what that means. What worked yesterday or today may not be for our future, that we hold with open hands and an open heart to the direction God may be leading us. Because the reality is, churches have a lot of sacred cows, right? And we do a lot, 20 years from now, we could be doing things that just don't make sense anymore. And what we want to say is, we want to have open hands and open hearts to the direction God is leading us, knowing that we're going to just be adaptable or adaptive and change. So if you're a team member or a team leader, which we're going to talk about, we ask our team members and team leaders, This is our culture that we're trying to create. That's our values. This is what we're trying to do. And we ask you to carry that culture into everything that you do with Church 180 and hopefully your life. But that said, I want to kind of rip back the playbook just a little bit, because this is one of the things that we're trying to add into our culture. Because as we are getting a little bit older and a little bit bigger, we're trying to add a little bit more structure. And so what we're saying is that if you come on as a volunteer with Church 180, you start as a team member, okay? And then what we're trying to do is appoint team leaders in different areas. Okay, kind of like you see, this is us organizing ourselves to advance the mission. So I want to just share with you, if you come on as a team member, this is one of the things we're going to be talking about in our meetings over the next couple months, is there's certain competencies that we are looking for in team members, and then certain competencies that we are looking for in team leaders. And this may be a snooze fest for some of y'all. I just feel like I need to fly through it real quick, just so that you know. So as a team member competency, which you have on your thing, it's just that understanding that I carry the culture. It's understanding I can be dependable, do my best within my role at Church 180. I can commit well to work with others, which we one of our values, we say turn toward unity. It's knowing I'm teachable, understand that I'm a lifelong learner, and that I have a unique personality and gifting that's to be stewarded for God's purposes in his church. And for each team, then, we have responsibilities now. This is us adding structure and, a little organization so that we can do better and do better. But then check this out. If you go to team leader competencies, notice how the expectation rises just a little bit. It's understanding that I'm responsible for turning towards my next step and becoming more like Jesus. I understand that I lead not by just carrying the culture, but by emulating and articulating the culture of Church 180. I don't just work well with others, but I lead others to turn toward unity and execute responsibilities. I understand that I lead others and do much of my work through them, not just doing it. I remain teachable while striving to develop my team, and I see that others have unique personalities and giftings that are to be stewarded for God's purposes in his church. And so that's kind of what we're looking at as far as team leaders, which we're going to go deep dive in some of our team things. Next up, we have directors. And these are people who lead the leaders of Church 180. And at this point, it's pretty much just our staff that are there. And then finally, as far as leading the whole church, it's right now we just have myself and our management team, which is kind of national, all over the place. Okay? And they've agreed to serve with us for our first few years and everything. But the reality is I'm sharing this with you. Okay, hear my heart here. I'm sharing this with you right now for a couple of reasons. One, I think you just need to know it. Number two, over the next couple of years, we want to appoint local leadership. We don't want to be a church led by people in Providence, Rhode Island. We don't want to be a church led by people in Portland, Oregon. We don't want to be a church led by people in Nashville, Tennessee. We want to be a church of people led by South San Diego, right here. That's what we're striving for. And so, like I said, I'm not twisting your arm. I'm not trying to look for, people to sign up to be a team member or team leader or whatever. I mean, if you're feeling called to that, talk about that later. But here's why I'm doing this. I'm hoping to raise some of y'all's sights and understand that, that we do want to appoint local leadership. And for some of us, that we may feel God calling in. Yeah, that's something I should work towards, or that's something that I should aspire to. That's something that may be a part of my future. And we just want to talk about that. We just want to be open and honest and just say, hey, we want this church to be led from within this church over the next couple of years. And so felt like you needed to know that. That's how we're organizing ourselves. And so I wrote it this way too. You'll aspire to live out your calling in this church over the next couple of years. So now I want to shift a little bit, and I want to talk about your calling based on this passage, okay? Because the church always advances through care and through people living out their calling. And I want to start by saying this, okay? And this will be on your note sheet. You can't live out your calling if you don't know what it is in life. You can't. It's impossible to live out your calling if you don't know what it is. And here's the sad thing, okay? Here's the sad thing. Most of us, myself included, I'm just going to throw myself under the bus here. Most of us don't take the time to assess what our God-given calling is. And rather, what we do is we look around at everybody else to determine our calling, right? We look around at everybody else, and here's what we try to do, okay? We try to either keep up, we try to be like, or my personal favorite, we try to one-up everybody else, right? And we just look around, and it's like, well, hey, what do they buy? Hey, where do they go on vacation? I wrote down a few of these. They buy these sorts of things, which means I should have to work such and such and do such and such to buy these things. They do all those kind of things, so I should do all those kinds of things. They give their kids these opportunities, so I should give my kids these opportunities. They go to these places, take vacations, here. I should probably do something like that. They live in this house or did this to their house, and so I should strive for that all the days, weeks, and months of my life to live there. And then I've alluded to it, but I don't know if you're like me, but the little ambition in you, a little drive, and you're like, well, they do that, so I should do something better, right? I should do something. I gotta one up this sucker and everything. And that's a less redeemed version of myself. But you get what I mean, right? It's not just keeping up, it's one up. And I mean, it goes like this. I mean, have you seen my car? Have you seen what my kid can do, right? Have you seen my body or my backyard or the pics from my last vacation or the things that I buy that make you see how much money I have, and on and on. I mean, you guys get, am I striking a nerve at all anywhere, myself included? And the reality is most of us look no further than that for how we spend our days, weeks, months, and years on this earth in our calling. And all those things influence our decisions and our direction. But Jesus gave us some final words that we've already looked at, right? And he said, go into all the earth and baptize people in my name and teach them how to obey everything that I've commanded you. So I would say this, number 2, if you're following along, disclaimer real quick, if you're not a follower of Jesus, it's okay. You can one up other people, that's fine. I think there's a better way. But if you are a follower of Jesus, it's not cool, okay? It's not cool. And so if you are a follower of Jesus, here is your calling. Your calling is to use your skills, to use your relationships, and to use your roles in life to advance the Great Commission. That's it. And there's all kinds of freedom. There's all kinds of flexibility there. There's all kinds of adaptiveness there. There's not one way you live out your calling, then we have to live it out the same. Because the reality is, most of you are good at different things than me. You have different skills. You know what I mean? And I'm guessing right now you're thinking, I know what some of my skills are. Usually it's where your passions meet, your proficiencies and everything. And those are the things that you are specifically good at. And each and every single one of us, we have skills. And not only do we have skills, God has put you in a network, right? You have people that you work with. You have people that you go to the park with. You have people that you do, you rub shoulders with when your kids play sports. You have people that are in your orbit, in your life, that are there. And they are a part of your calling. They are. And you have roles. Some of y'all are moms, dads, husbands, wives. You maybe have a job. Maybe you have a position on a board. You have a position in this church. A job in this church. And literally your calling is to use those skills, those relationships, and those roles that you have to advance Jesus' final words and going into all the world, going into our area. And that is your calling in a very simplistic version. But the key is this. This is the final thing. This is the key to it all. Living out your calling requires that you let go of what is not. And I'm not going to do the hard work for you on this one. But living out your calling requires letting go of what is not. And see, chances are as I talked about keeping up or looking like or one-upping other people, some things have bubbled to the surface in your life where you're like, man, I'm chasing after that or chasing after this, and it has absolutely nothing to do with why God's put me on this earth. And I think the reality is what we see in this passage, you know, what we see from the apostles, it's like, man, we were the ones who literally heard Jesus talk. We watched him die, and then we watched him rise from the dead, okay? And it's not that the work that they were doing was beneath them. It was just that, holy cow, we've got to let go of that work if we're going to talk about what Jesus actually said to me a few days ago or a few weeks ago, right? Because we can't do both. We can't wait on the tables, and we can't tell people, you know, hey, this is what Jesus said when he did this. This is what Jesus said when he did this. So they had to let go of these responsibilities that were coming. And the realities for you and the realities for me is there are things in our lives that are just trivial, that are vain, that are in pursuit of really not much. They're just keeping up or one-upping or whatever people around us. And I think the thing that God would say to each and every single one of us is, man, I'd love to see you let go of some of that stuff so that you can grab hold of life that is truly life, right? And so that's our playbook. That's us. That's how we're trying to organize, and that's what we hope, and that's what we desire, and that's what we dream for you. We're going to move into a time of communion, so I'm going to have the band come back up. And I wish they were singing that So Will I song again, right? You guys want to do a second version? Because where this message, that song, and communion intersect is this. And I need you to hear me on this. That final, like, I got choked up for the final words of that song. Right? Where it says, you're the one that never leaves the one behind. You're the one that never leaves the one behind. You get that? That's your mission. To be like Jesus and to be one that never leaves the one behind. That's why living out your calling is so important. That's why us being organized as a church is so important, because there are people far from Jesus living for absolutely nothing. And Jesus died for them, just like he died for you. And that's what we celebrate with this, with, you know, living our calling and mission. That's what we celebrate with Easter. That's what we celebrate right now through communion, is that Jesus literally traveled from Galilee to Jerusalem, prayed fervently that God would find another way, but knew there was no other way, and then willfully went to a cross and died for you, and he died for me, so that we could be forgiven and we could be not left behind. And with our lives, we just go and share that and advance that. That's all we do. And so what you can do today, you should have got it on your way in. If not, you can grab it by the door on your way out or during the song. But there's a little packet with a little juice that represents the blood of Jesus that was poured out, and a little cracker that represents the body of Jesus that was broken, so that we and nobody who chooses to trust in Jesus could be left behind. And so I'm going to pray for us, and you can take that at any point during this next song in celebration and in remembrance of him. So Jesus, God, thank you that you're the one that never leaves the one behind. And Lord, may we with our lives, God, live out our calling and be men and women who don't leave people behind, but live out our mission, live out our calling through our skills and responsibilities and roles and relationships. God, may we do that. And God, would you help this church, God, to not get mission creep and stay focused on the objective, God. Thank you so much. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
All these voices
Hey, as you go, just want to remind you to turn this thing in. And next week we have Discover 180. It's kind of like if you've never been or you're new to Church 180, we like to just share the heart and why behind everything around here, our hopes and dreams for you. So that'll be next week with Lunch and Child Care. And guys, I'm pumped. We're going to be digging right into that 79 miles next week. And we're going to be talking about the story of the 10 lepers that were healed and what we can learn from that. It's going to be awesome. So hope you have a great day and hope you have a great week. Much love, you guys.